Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to bring you a book haul. This is a combination of books that I received from publishers as well as a whole bunch of really generous gifts I received from my online friends. This is mostly horror with a lot of science fiction and a little bit of fantasy. And as always, I think I have some really exciting books to share with you all. I apologize if you're hearing a little bit of background noise. It's my kids' nap time, so it's the time I gotta film, and my neighbor, who mows his lawn every single day, is mowing his lawn right now. So hopefully you're not hearing too much in the background. Otherwise, let's get on to the books. Let's start with the books I received from publishers, and we might as well start with the horror book I have not read yet, but I'm really excited to. And that is The Children of Red Peak by Craig DeLuey. This is the book that I received from the author's publicist, Creative Edge, and I'm very excited to have a copy because Craig DeLuey is a pretty big and well-known horror author. He's probably best known for Suffer the Children, which I have read and reviewed. And this is his new book coming out in November. It follows a group of people who, when they were children, were part of a cult, and everyone else in the cult died, and they're the sole survivors. I believe one of them commits suicide, and now the rest of them are getting back together and recounting the events of their childhood and putting the pieces together. So this is a horror book with a heavy cult aspect, and I know for a lot of you that is a big buzzy word when it comes to horror, so I think a lot of you are going to be interested in this. I mentioned I have not yet read this because I did want to wait till closer to the release date, but you can definitely trust I'm going to have a review coming in October, November, so stay tuned for that. It sounds like a really good premise, and I'm excited to see what Craig DeLuey is going to do. Switching over to science fiction, I also received a copy of Alpha Omega by Nicholas Bowling, and this I received from Titan Books. And this is a really hard one to describe because it's set in a near future where we follow a few different perspectives, one being some teenage boys that find a skull in the yard of their school. It also follows a teacher who gets pulled into some online conspiracies when his grading system does not work properly. And then we also follow a student that was actually kicked out or expelled from his school, and he now spends all of his time online in this virtual reality. And wouldn't you know, it turns out that he might be needed in order to save the world. And so it's a really convoluted, crazy plot. I discussed it more in a recent science fiction and fantasy wrap-up, so if I remember, I'll link it down below. But definitely an interesting one to try out for yourself, especially for those of you that love VR or virtual reality stories as much as I do. Next, I am so thankful for St. Martin's Press for sending me a finished copy of Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. I reviewed this book earlier in the year, but I reviewed an arc, and so now I have a gorgeous finished copy. If you don't know, Jennifer Hillier is one of my favorite thriller authors. I just think that she has an amazing ability to tell stories that are just these incredible page turners. She also brings a lot of diversity into her stories, and I was so grateful for a chance to read her newest 2020 release. And yeah, I was really excited when this showed up in the mail unsolicited. Switching back to science fiction, I also received a copy of Stormblood by Jeremy Saul, and this is another one that I have already reviewed on my channel. I was contacted by the author and then sent a copy via the publicist with Gallants, and this is a sci-fi thriller that almost has a noir aspect to it. It's similar to the new Blade Runner movie, and so this is a sci-fi thriller that is set in a world where there are super soldiers that are created by infusing them with this alien technology called Stormblood, and it basically makes them superhuman, so they are fast and just react very quickly. It basically is like a natural adrenaline rush. And of course, this story follows one of the people who has this technology, and this made him very effective during the war, and now afterwards he is dealing with the repercussions of having this Stormblood. And wouldn't you know, the other people that have Stormblood technology are possibly getting killed off, and the story goes from there. So if you want a fast-paced story with a lot of really cool technology, this is a great one to check out. It's very easy to get into, so even if you're new to sci-fi, I think it's very accessible. And again, I've done a review of this if you want to check that out. I also received review copies of the Machine Dynasty trilogy by Madeline Ashby. These came from Angry Robot Books. The third book in the series, Rev, came out this year, and they were so kind to send me the first two books, VN and ID, so that I could catch up in the series first. This is set in a future where humans have developed a form of artificial intelligence that they call VN. And these synthetic life forms are really unique because they are able to reproduce and have relationships with other humans. And so the story follows a young girl named Amy who is a synthetic life, and she gets pulled into a crazy thriller where she is on the run because her failsafe, which is a device in her that is designed to make sure that she always protects humans, and if she ever allows a human to be harmed in her presence, it will go off and cause her to shut down. However, as you might expect, the failsafe fails and she does not get shut down, and so everyone wants to see her get caught and examined in a lab, and so she goes on the run, and it's so much fun. I've done a full review because this book has a lot in it and it's hard to describe in a really short amount of time in a book haul. So if you're interested in it, please go check out my review. Or if you are a fan of artificial intelligence stories, you might just want to jump into the series and try it for yourself. And also for review copies, I received The Quantum Magician and The Quantum Garden, both by Derek Kuskin. These are from Rebellion Publishing, and I actually requested these copies because the author has a new book coming out in 2021 called House of Sticks, and I'm really excited for that one, but I understand that it's set in the same universe as these books. So because I am a completionist, I did want to go back and try these first. These are really unique heist books that follow a brilliant man who is tasked with stealing something, and so it's a bit of a heist mixed with a space opera, and I've started reading the first book and it's a lot of fun. It really is a heist story, so you're going through all the classic beats of a heist narrative where he's collecting his team and making their plan, and it's definitely a lot of fun. It does have a lot of hard science in it, and I'll be honest, it's kind of bending my brain in difficult ways, but I'll report back in my next review, so stay tuned for that. Moving on to books that I've received as gifts, I want to start by saying that I realize that I'm incredibly privileged to have so many generous online friends, and I do want to preface the fact that I did not ask anyone to send me anything. I do post my Amazon wish list publicly, so I acknowledge that I leave that possibility open, but I'm just overwhelmed by everyone's generosity this year. I think for everyone, our birthdays in 2020 have been a little bit lackluster. I stayed in, and the only gift I received from someone I knew personally was from my husband, who bought me a house coat. So it definitely was a quieter year. It wasn't a big party or anything like that. So the fact that I received not one but multiple books for my birthday just made me feel incredibly special. Before this year, I don't think I've ever received a book despite asking every single friend and family member that might possibly get me a birthday gift for a book. I just never ever get them. So I just want to preface this by saying that I realize I'm very lucky to have the ability to get these books and all of that. So keep that in mind. I'm very much aware of my own privilege here. That being said, let me actually show you what I was sent. First, from my wonderful bookish friend Shelley, I received a copy of The Ghost Line by Andrew Neil Gray and J.S. Herbison. This is a Tor.com novella, so it's relatively short, which is why I've always held off buying my own copy, because I sometimes worry about like getting my money's worth for the amount of pages I'm buying. But this is one that I absolutely love. It was one of my favorites from a couple years back, and this is a sci-fi story that I describe as a haunted house story set on a spaceship, and it follows a pair of salvagers that go to get parts from the ship, and the ship itself is possibly haunted, and it's just lyrical and lovely. I so badly want to reread it, and now I finally have a chance, so thank you so much, Shelley. I am so grateful that you sent this one my way. Also for my birthday, I received a copy of Camp Slaughter by Sergio Gomez from Brandy in Seattle. And if you want to leave a note down below, because I haven't had a chance to personally thank you, because I really don't know where to find your YouTube handle or Twitter handle. So please, if this was you, let me know so I can thank you in person. But I am so excited to have this book. If you don't know, it was one of my favorite books from last year, and a book that I declared to be one of the scariest books that I've ever ever read if you've watched that video I did a while back. And this is a story about a group of teenagers that go out to party in the woods, and wouldn't you know, there are some cannibals nearby. And my goodness, this book was so much fun. It was the slasher I wanted it to be, and it was bloody but fun, and I just had a blast reading it. So it's one I've definitely wanted to own for a while. I did read a digital ARC, and because it is from an indie author, they're a little bit harder to get because you don't always have as many online resources that sell them. So Amazon was the main place that I was hoping to get this book from. So again, very grateful that you sent this copy to me, and it definitely made for a wonderful birthday gift because this is one I'm definitely going to be rereading. Then from my black-hearted friend Sandy, I received a copy of The Troop by Nick Cutter, which is a book I feel like I used to talk about on my channel all the time, and I haven't done that in a while. So if you haven't read this one, I definitely recommend it. Obviously, it's a book I wanted to own a copy of. This follows a group of Boy Scouts out in the PEI area of Canada, and they are going about doing their Boy Scout things when a very voraciously hungry man shows up and things go terribly wrong. This book is often compared to Lord of the Flies because the boys basically turn against each other, and it's a wonderful example of survival horror and also a piece of gross out horror. I always say that this is the kind of book you cannot read while eating a sandwich, and I have always wanted a copy of it. It's always been one I've wanted to reread, and I'm so thankful for Sandy for sending me this because, again, I'm a big rereader, and so I always love to own my favorites because I want them available so I can read them at a moment's notice, because they often are getting harder and harder to get back through my library system. Then also from my friend Sandy, who is ridiculously generous, she sent me copies of the entire Broken Earth trilogy. She sent this over the last few months. And of course, the first book is the 5th season. The second book is Obelisk Gate, which I technically have hauled before, but it made sense to show it here again. And then of course, I just received a copy of the final book, The Stone Sky. This is a post-apocalyptic story that follows a couple of different women who have the ability to control the earth, and these books deal with oppression and so many important topics. I love them. There are some emotional gut punches in these books. I gush about them all the time, and so I'm so grateful to have my own copies because these are the kind of books you definitely want to reread. When you're reading it the first time, you know that the author is holding back information, and so I think it's a book that's going to be really interesting to read again. And possibly as exciting as having copies of this book is the fact that Sandy herself got really excited because she knew how much I love the books and ended up getting herself her own copies and is now falling in love with the trilogy as well. And that makes me super happy because I love sharing books with other people. It's why I do Booktube, is because I love to recommend books to other people, and when they love them as much as I do, it's just a wonderful feeling. So highly recommend the series. I can't stop gushing about it this year for good reasons. Then from a subscriber, Stephanie, she sent me a copy of Krampus by Bram. I want to preface that this is not Stephanie from That's What She Read, but another Stephanie. I did get your last name, but I didn't know if you wanted me to say it on camera. Again, this is one that I have not had a chance to thank you personally, so if you are watching this, please drop me a note and identify yourself so I can thank you. But I was so excited when this showed up. I have loved this book. If you don't know, Krampus is about, well, Krampus, the evil Lord of Christmas, and this is a good book that blends fantasy with horror, and the artwork, if you're not familiar, in this book is absolutely beautiful. It's all done, I believe, by the author himself. And I don't want to spoil anything here. I've already lost the pictures. Hang on. Let me find something. But there's pictures throughout it, including some color ones. And this is the book that I recommended in my Christmas horror video that I did, I believe, last year. And it's actually one I was planning on rereading for Christmas this year. So spoiler alert for that TBR video. But I'm so grateful to have my own copy because, as you can see, it's a beautiful book as itself, again with pictures and beautiful deckled edges. It's really just a gorgeous piece, and the story itself definitely holds up as well. So this is a book I can just see myself kind of I don't know, sitting down with a cup of hot chocolate on a cold winter night with the fireplace going, and it's going to be perfect. So I'm so grateful for a copy. Thank you again, Stephanie. And again, please leave me a comment down below. Then from a subscriber called Buttermilk Biscuits, I received not one but 2 books, and thank you so much. That is oh so generous. And I was really excited about the 2 books that you picked out because they're books that I was really hoping that I would have someone in my life gift to me, because these are books that I wouldn't really get a chance to read through my library. The first one is Dune by Frank Herbert, which is the super buzzy book that everyone's talking about because the movie is coming out. I mentioned this actually in my mid-year freakout tag as a book that I was hoping to read by the end of the year, and that's definitely the plan. But the reason I was saying that it's hard for me to read this through my library is that it's a really chunky book, and with my library I don't like the pressure of having to rush and finish a book before it needs to get returned, and a book like this has a hold list, so I just find it really stressful to have to like time my reading to perfectly fit it in and rush to read it in those couple of weeks. So I'm incredibly grateful to have my own copy. That is how I prefer to read chunky fantasy and sci-fi books, and I'm very hopeful that this will be a new favorite because everyone I know is gushing about it online, and I'm hoping that I will love it as well. So thank you so much for this one. And the other book that they sent is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, which is the second book in the Stormlight Archives series. I actually already have a copy of the first book, which I picked up through my used bookstore, but I'm so confident that I'm going to love this epic fantasy series that I really wanted to have the second book available. This again is a book that I plan to read over the Christmas holidays, and so I'm really looking forward to getting into obviously the first book first and then moving on to this one. And I want to mention Buttermilk Biscuits, if you haven't yet read Dune or haven't yet read Stormlight Archives, feel free to message me, because while I don't do a lot of buddy reads outside of my Patreon group anymore, I am always willing and very happy to do a buddy read with someone who's kind enough to send me the books that I can read along with them. So do let me know if you want. We can definitely chat on Boxer if you're interested in that. I'll be reading these in probably November, December, and really looking forward to getting into these chunky fantasy and sci-fi monkeys. Finally, we have reached the Junji Ito section of this video, and if you aren't familiar, I am a huge fan of Junji Ito's work, but I think most of you know that because I got multiple books from my wish list, all by Junji Ito. I gushed about him in my last book haul, and I guess you all were listening, and I'm oh so grateful because I definitely know that they're not the cheapest books, but they are definitely also books that I love to reread, and just books that are really nice to own physical copies of because, of course, you really get the full experience getting to turn the pages. So the first one I want to show here is Fragments of Horror, which has an amazing cover, of course, inspired by the classic painting by, I want to say, Van Gogh. Hopefully I'm not wrong. And this is a fantastic collection of short stories. A lot of them are very Japanese, inspired by, of course, the culture that the author comes from, and I just really love them. I definitely need to reread them. And I've got to mention that this, of course, came from an online friend and patron, Mike, and I'm so thankful that you sent this. I adore your taste in books. As you know, I constantly gush whenever you share a book haul. I wish you had a channel down below that I could link, because I would love more people to check out your taste in books, but you don't. So I'll just personally thank you here again and say that I'm so grateful for you to think of me and to send me a book. It was a really wonderful treat and definitely made me feel really special around my birthday. Then also from my oh so generous friend Sandy, she sent a copy of Shiver by Junji Ito. This is another collection of stories and some of my favorites. I think this is the first collection of short stories that I ever read, and it definitely cements it as one of my all-time favorite collections. And the cover is absolutely beautiful, and I was so surprised when this showed up in the mail because, again, she'd already sent me a book or two, and I did not expect this one to be coming as well. So thank you again, Sandy. And last but certainly not least, I have 2 books from my oh so generous and lovely friend Brandy. She actually does have a YouTube channel, so I will link it down below, even though of course that's not why she sends me the books, but she's a fantastic reviewer of a bit of everything, but predominantly I watch her for the horror and the sci-fi, which you know I love. And the first book that she sent me was Venus in the Blind Spot, which is his new 2020 release. I actually just reviewed it on my channel, and and I was complaining about the fact that I had to read it via NetGalley, which is a digital review site, which is normally fine, but when it comes to graphic novels, they make it really difficult to read, so you have to read it on a desktop computer, and they also have huge watermarks over all the pages so that you can't steal them, but it makes for just a really poor reading experience. Despite that, I love the stories in this collection, and so to actually have a nice finished copy is amazing. And this book just came out, so I think it shipped as soon as it was released, and I was so grateful when it showed up. Thank you so much, Brandy. And because Brandy is ridiculously generous, she not only sent one but two books. So the other book is Uzumaki, also of course by Junji Ito, and this is the spiral horror book that I have been gushing about on my channel. I listed it as a favorite of mine a couple years back in one of my best of the year videos, but when this book came, I actually had a really fun surprise, and that's the fact that this book is really big, which you should think, oh, of course you know how big the book is, you read it. Turns out that when I got this book, I originally got it from my library, and now looking back, I realized that my library did not have the complete collection of Uzumaki. It only had volume 1. So I believe I've read a third of this book. I considered the first third to be a favorite of mine, but apparently I've never actually read the complete Uzumaki story, and that makes me so excited because I love this story and apparently I'm not done. So I'm definitely going to start back from the beginning, but I'm really looking forward to this one, and like, what a wonderful surprise. I had no idea there was more to the story. I loved everything I read, and yeah, I get to keep reading, so what a wonderful surprise. Thank you so much, Brandy. I probably would have never figured it out on my own because, again, the library only has the first volume, so I don't know when I would have read the other ones, and I didn't even know they existed, so go figure. I thought that was pretty funny. So that is it for this video. Let me know, of all the books, which ones are you most excited for? And once more, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who sent me books. I just felt so special on my birthday and loved and thought of, so you really did make it a very special birthday year for me, despite everything else going on in 2020. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. This book haul is pretty representative of what I read, a lot of horror, sci-fi, thrillers, and fantasy. And if you're still watching this, consider giving the video a thumbs up, because nothing like a video involving a whole bunch of review copies and bookish gifts will bring a whole lot of thumbs down. And so if you want to kind of counteract that and balance it out, I'd appreciate the thumbs up. Otherwise, remember to hit that notification bell if you haven't already, and share this video online. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.